because last time, and then I broadcast 3, 2, 1. And we are live on YouTube. I will have to shut down the browser. And welcome everyone. Now, today we are privileged to have Peter Towers back with us again. And he's going to talk to us about the 3 new trends of alternative funding, capital raising for small business. Now, this topic, it is a hot topic these days because Peter Towers is passionate about alternative funding for small business. He's done all his research on these things. He's really an expert on these areas. How are we going to find alternative capital raising for small business? And that's why we invited him today, and we are privileged. We are privileged to have him with us today. Welcome, Peter.
Hello, Priscilla. How are you? Good morning, everyone. Hope you're having a wonderful day.
Exactly. So in this wonderful day, we're going to talk about wonderful topics which small business and is very interested in. Peter is going to talk to us about the 3 new trends, and which is equity crowdsource funding, the business growth fund, and the government grants, which are the alternative funding for small business these days without going to a bank. So welcome, Peter.
Good morning, Priscilla.
And let's see how we start. So tell us about what is happening with crowdsource funding, equity raising these days.
I think it's very exciting for the 55 companies who have been able to raise over $40 million direct from the public. They're happy. 2 intermediaries who have at this stage secured 70% of the business of companies that elected to try to raise capital utilizing crowdsourced funding equity raising. I think they're happy because they got 70% of the market. Unfortunately, 7 of the intermediaries have not yet had any client raise capital. And I suspect that whilst those 55 companies are happy, there's a lot of intermediaries who are not happy because they're not getting enough quality deals. Why? Does this mean that every small business and medium-sized business in Australia is very happy with their current financing arrangement? That's a bit different to what I hear around the traps in the news media. It's been very difficult to deal with banks. I think the problem is that not enough accountants have a full appreciation of how crowdsourced funding equity raising can be utilized as a significant financing contribution to your clients. And also, I think some of the problems with small businesses and medium-sized enterprises, for various reasons, you don't know enough about it. For argument's sake, a very experienced accountant contacted one of my colleagues last week and said, you can only raise $5 million total out of crowdsourced funding equity raising. Therefore, I'm not interested. Well, he's wrong. Wrong. A company can raise $5 million in a 12-month period. And then if the market will support the company, and the company wishes to, of course, they can raise a further $5 million the following year. So Priscilla, and all of your listeners or watchers today, I think crowdsourced funding equity raising is the biggest change that's occurred for financing arrangements for small businesses and medium-sized enterprises in the last 35 years. I think it's a great opportunity for many more small businesses than what have currently taken advantage. When this was first promoted in Australia, one of the most experienced intermediaries forecast that by 2021, the annual deal in Australia would be around $1.3 billion. Well, we're not going to get anywhere near that figure. And I suspect because of apathy. People don't know about it, don't want to know about it, aren't prepared to do some learning work to understand how this source of financing can revolutionize your business. And for accountants, can really earmark you as an accountant who has a real concern for your clients, and you're going to go out of your way to help them. And by the way, it's a good new fee income activity for your accountancy business. So that's where I see crowdsource funding, equity raising, Priscilla. I think it's exciting. The big, I think, sadness about the whole thing is not enough people are taking advantage of this opportunity.
And so where do you think it's going to grow in the future? You have some forecasts, and you are in touch with intermediaries. What do they say? What's the trend?
Well, the two intermediaries that have got 70% of the market are fairly happy, as you'd probably expect. One thing that we've got back from our survey of intermediaries, and they all haven't returned their forms to us yet, so when we have them all back, we will be publishing the report, is one of the intermediaries is saying that they reject 50% of the people that come and see them, or maybe a better way of putting that might be that 50% of the people that contact them are not ready, they don't understand how it works. But one of the intermediaries said that figure was as high as 95%. That's a real concern. I'm talking to the intermediaries now about referring those clients onto people who are affiliated with ESS BizTools, who have gone through a process, an accreditation process, to be able to deliver crowdsource funding equity raising advice. And one of the intermediaries is quite happy with that idea. And that was your suggestion originally, Priscilla, so thank you. But I think there is an opportunity there for accountants to do a lot more. The fact that 7 of the intermediaries have not yet been able to have anyone raise capital, I think indicates that they are not getting the referrals. People are not knocking on their doors. I think they should be knocking down their doors, saying, we have a client here who wants to raise $500,000 or $1 million, $2 million, or even $5 million. And here's the business plan, the budgets, the cash flow forecast, the leadership team, the board of directors, and we've prepared the crowdsource funding offer document, and we've already taken the client through the process of understanding how this all works and what your role is as the intermediary, which they can say to the intermediary. That's the sort of service that I think accountants should be providing. And for those of your watchers or viewers is probably the word, viewers and listeners today who are business people, that's what you should be demanding that your accountant can do for you. And if they can't do it, I'd be urging you to contact Priscilla or me, and we will be able to ensure that you get the advice that you need for this process.
Yeah, so there needs to be a call to action.
Yeah, very much so, Priscilla.
For accountants and small business, please come to us and look out for the alternative funding. This is new to Australia, and we are privileged to have it after all these years of waiting, isn't it?
Yeah, well, we're 7 or 8 years behind, and admittedly, I'm told by experts from the United Kingdom, when it started there, it was fairly low key to start with, and after the 3rd year, it took off. Well, we're into the 3rd year now, in effect. Although in Australia we had the restriction on could only be a unlisted public company for the first 10 months of the operation, so that's distorted the figures a little bit. So in real terms, we're only into the 2nd year of private companies being able to raise capital. But when you look at it, if you got a business that's got turnover of under $25 million, gross asset value under $25 million, not listed on a stock exchange anywhere in the world, they're the legal tests. The company then needs a vision. They need to have a leadership team that's got something burning in their stomach, that they want to achieve something in their business careers with their company. That is basically the criteria to be a company that could raise capital. In our scoreboard, there's been 55 companies raise money, but they're from 36 different industries. So it's not narrowed just to one group of businesses built around wine making or beer making. 36 different business types have already raised capital. I think crowdsource funding equity raising's basically there for every business in Australia, unless there's some other legislation that prevents your company being able to go to the public to raise money. And I don't know of any. So there's the challenge. It's 2020 in not too many days' time. Everyone should be thinking about what your action plan's going to be in next year. I think one of the great action activities for small and medium-sized businesses should be to say, we really want to have a good look at this alternative way of funding our business, and we want to do it in January and February 2020.
Exactly. Call to action as soon as possible. Please look into it. Peter has extensive recordings and material on this. And we also have done a couple already with Peter. So please look up our portfolio online. We will keep doing these recordings for you, just to make sure that you are aware of what's going on, and so you can take advantage of these new alternatives of raising funds. And Peter is very passionate about it. He does have all the material, so just come to us and we can help you. So let's look at second trend. So Peter has also extensive material on this subject. So let's inform our audience and what is the Australian Business Growth Fund. This is a new one around.
Yes, I think this is great news. The Liberal National Party government in their election campaign promised that they would deliver a fund to invest in small and medium-sized enterprises. And I think a lot of people probably treated it as an election promise and didn't expect anything to happen. Well, the Federal Treasurer 2 weeks ago announced that the Australian Business Growth Fund commencement date is imminent. So let's have a look at it, because this is great news. The government has encouraged the 4 major banks to contribute $100 million in capital to this fund. And one of the smaller banks has already contributed $20 million. So I suspect that that process is going to continue for a bit longer yet, where smaller banks will be encouraged to invest into this fund. The federal government is contributing $100 million. So currently there's $520 million. And there's been articles in the media suggesting that the Treasurer is also talking to some of the major superannuation funds about also making contributions, with the government's overall aim to get the fund up to around $1 billion. Now, the exciting news for businesses, first of all, is that the Treasurer has indicated that the fund, which will have its own board of directors and employ its own management team, and it will not be stacked with bankers, the fund is going to invest in 30 to 50 companies per annum in what the Treasurer refers to as patient capital. So they're obviously not looking to make an investment and then do an exit in a short period of time. They're understanding that this is going to be a fairly long-term investment. The companies that the fund will invest in will currently have turnovers of $2 million to $50 million. And there'll be 30 to 50 of them per annum. So I think I just said. So that's opening up tremendous opportunities for businesses. Oh, and incidentally, the Treasurer has also indicated that the Australian Business Growth Fund will not take any more than a 40% equity stake in a company because they want the entrepreneur to continue to be the major shareholder and to basically be running his or her own business. But the benefit they will get is that they will be able to access some input from the fund. For accountants, this opens up yet another new income stream. Now, I had someone the other day ring me and said, oh, that's only going to be 30 to 50 companies a year. I said, I'll take 3 or 4 of them, thanks. And that's the way I think accountants have got to think. Don't go writing it off because 30 to 50. The bulk of these businesses are currently going to be clients of small to medium-sized accountancy firms all around Australia. If you sit back and do nothing and are not proactive and don't talk to the clients about this new opportunity, following closely after crowdsourced funding equity raising, well, I think it's no wonder that clients will walk and go to someone else who will be able to offer them assistance. Because your client's going to need a business plan, budgets, cash flows, forecasts, a leadership team, a board of directors. Basically the same type of information as what a crowdsourced funding equity raising company needs, except there's no need to brief them on how the intermediary system works or how the capital raising process works, because you're just doing direct with the fund. Now, the Treasurer hasn't announced all of the rules yet, and as soon as they are announced, we'll be having some further commentary on this, and we will be producing within ESS BizTools a new updated product package called Australian Business Growth Fund. For many years, accountants used to say to themselves, geez, we're glad we got the government and the tax office continually changing the rules because it means that accountants generate revenue from those changes. Happens all the time, doesn't it? GST, capital gains tax, just to mention a few. Well, for the last couple of years, this current government has also been playing for accountants, I think. We've had crowdsourced fund equity raising. We've had early stage innovation companies, which a lot of people tend to forget about, but don't forget them, they're still there. And now we've got Australian business growth funds that all require companies to have implemented some key documents. It should be just basic documents in the way businesses are operating in the start of the new decade, the decade of the 20s, 2020. So I think the call to action on this one should be that you're going to be ready. The Treasurer indicated that this was all imminent. So I assumed in the first quarter of 2020, the Australian Business Growth Fund is going to be operational. Are you going to be ready to be able to guide your clients through this process? That's the challenge for accountants, Priscilla.
Exactly. Now is the time to take action to make sure that an interested company is investment ready. So let's look around and find our clients if they are investment ready, help them and small business to come forward and actually ask for help. Help is now. Peter has extensive material on this one, and probably we're going to come back with this subject early next year, just after the recess, Peter.
Yes, because hopefully Mr. Frydenberg will finalise the rules then, and the board will be appointed. I'm optimistic that all that will be announced before Christmas, so that that fund can get itself organised in January, February, and be open for business basically from March. I think that's great news for Australian business, especially when you put these developments all together. What's occurred since 2015, when Mr. Turnbull was the Prime Minister, he announced the government's innovation statement, and these were commitments that were made then, and they've now been delivered. Now, I've heard criticism from some of the intermediaries and some people blaming the Australian Security Investment Commission for not doing things. It's up to accountants and business people to put these new opportunities to the test. Sure, you can write to the Treasurer or the Prime Minister if you wish, if something's not working right, But let's get out there and be proactive in making these new opportunities for financing arrangements for businesses, small and medium-sized enterprise businesses, work.
Exactly, Peter. So we promised a third alternative to funding, and so this is maybe some small business overlooks this, and even accountants overlook this, or they are not aware that those grants exist and government grants exist and what they are for. Our mission here, Peter, is to inform them how they work and how extensive this program is.
Yes, Priscilla, unfortunately, I think a lot of people either don't know or have forgotten about government grants. The federal government, the state and the territory governments have all got government grants. It's part of the Australian business culture, and it extends now well beyond business to sporting organisations, for not-for-profits. But what we are here to talk to today about is the business grants. They're there. There's hundreds of them. There's a lot of money in some of them. There's $1 million available from the Accelerating Commercialisation grant that's offered by the federal government. I think accountants should be checking every one of their clients when they work on them each year. This is their business clients, of course, to see whether they might be eligible for grants. Grants are continually moving. Governments release a grant and it stays in place for a while, then they decide to change it, especially the state and territory governments. They're continually rolling grants over. And obviously grants are there for natural disasters, and we've had a few of them this year in Australia. And looking at these bushfires, there's going to be further grants that will be offered to compensate the poor people who have been affected by those bushfires and other natural disasters. So grants are there. They are a great introduction for accountants into offering business advisory services for your clients or prospects, because I know that a high percentage, unfortunately, of Australian accountants ignore grants. Either they don't know about them or they don't really want to do them. I don't know why, because the trend in Australia that's been illustrated yet again now by Xero's report last week about the accounting profession is going to change dramatically over the next 20 years. 80% of your current work won't be there in 20 years, according to the Xero CEO. Now, that mightn't worry me so much in 20 years' time, but it's going to worry a lot of accountants out there today. Start thinking about it now. That's not just going to occur in 20 years' time. It's going to progressively occur. A bit like all the other changes, digital disruption. I had people laugh to me or scoffed at the Deloitte report of 7 or 8 years ago that predicted the changes through digital disruption. Well, have a look around you. What hasn't changed in the last 7 to 8 years in business? So government grants are a way of you starting to help your clients. Clients love getting grants because they're going to get a service for at least a 50% discount, because the government's going to pay the other amount. And the real benefit for you is you're not only helping your client and earning some brownie points there, but as an accountant or a business advisor, you can actually receive part of that funding to attend to work that is generally described as business advisory services, business plans, budgets, management consulting, corporate governance advice on how a board of directors operates, training on interpretation of financial reports and how key performance indicators operate, some project management for a major grant like an Accelerating Commercialisation. There are a wide range of activities that proactive accounting firms can secure out of those grants. So you've helped the client through the entire process. You've identified them in the first instance. You've then undertaken for a fee, the grant application process, and then you can submit a proposal to undertake some of the work. And your client's only paying half the normal bill. I think it's a great system. Within ESS Biz Grants, which is our associated product, we have a grant finder, which we developed some years ago to try to assist accountants to be able to identify grants. We've got a few hundred people use that system, but there should be a few thousand firms, I think, because that should be the level of interest in grants. I know 10,000 accounting firms in Australia probably won't be interested, but I'd like to think that 2,000 to 3,000 will be caring enough about their clients to be proactive in identifying government grants that might be suitable for them.
Yeah, your product is amazing, the SBIZ grants, and that's a very good tool for finding the best grant for the best client. So accountants should be proactive over that. Clients should come to us and ask for those. Maybe their business is eligible for a grant. If it's not eligible this year, it might be the following year when the the new batch comes out. As Peter said, they are all changing, but we are keeping a close eye on this product. So when you say about the clients, they like the BIZ grants because they do get professional service on a 50% discount.
That's right. And I think we're looking at identifying items which could be described as a call to action. I think as we leave 2019 and move into 2020, I'd like to think that your viewers today, those who are accountants, list government grants in their call to action to implement early in 2020. And for those of you who are watching, who are business operators, please write down grants. They're there. You're missing out on them if you're not applying for them. Some of your competitors are getting them, and that might be the reason they have better information, even better machinery than what you've got, or they're getting funding for their research and development. It's giving some of your competitors an advantage in the marketplace. I think you should be resisting that and saying, we're going to get on the same level playing field. We're going to apply for grants as well. And
exactly.
If you need some assistance, please contact us.
Exactly. So Peter had an extensive work behind this, and he has it in place for decades. So please look it up. He's very well informed, and his product is absolutely comprehensive for you. And yes, government grants are still available, and they will be available in the future, isn't it, Peter?
Oh, yes. I don't think any Australian government would remove grants. I know some of, if you've got New Zealand people watching, they'll say, well, we've never heard of grants. Well, they don't have them in New Zealand anymore. But in Australia, it's really part of our culture. And businesses can avail themselves of this opportunity. And I think it's great that governments are supporting businesses for hundreds of millions of dollars a year in various grants. It's up to businesses to continually to apply, because it's very easy for governments to remove these grants if they believe they're not being used or they're not achieving their benefit. And they undoubtedly, what the governments are trying to do is to help business people run a better business, because if you run a better business, you invariably make more profits, and you then invariably will pay more tax. But that's okay if the government, state, federal, or territory has helped you get to that stage where you are running a better business.
And accountants and bookkeepers should get concerned and to be involved in assisting small business with these grants. And help is available. So
yeah, I agree. Yep.
Exactly. Now, just to recap a bit, to remind them, what's the difference between crowdsourced funding, equity raising, and crowdfunding? In short, give us a definition here.
Oh, okay. I think it's unfortunate that in Australia, when the government brought in the crowdsourced funding equity raising legislation, they didn't change the wording a bit more. They did in the UK. So there's two different terms. Crowdfunding has been with us for 10 or 12 years. It's really grown up with social media. And it has come about through situations where someone's inventing a new product and needs $5,000 to finish it, and has gone on to one of the social media platforms and had some photographs or perhaps produced a video on what they were doing and asked for people to send them money. In some instances, there was an undertaking by the inventor that the contributors would receive something back, but not in all cases. In other cases, crowdfunding was used in the unfortunate event of someone needing expensive medical services, perhaps overseas, and the family didn't have enough money, so they made an appeal to the general public to contribute money. So that's crowdfunding. So in crowdfunding, normally you hand over the money, you've got no real way of knowing how it's been spent. So there's no accountability, and there's really no laws governing what happens with that money. Crowdsourced funding equity raising, however, has got a lot of legislation about it. It is part of the Corporations Act. There were amendments made to the Corporations Act 2.5 years ago to enable crowdsourced funding equity raising to be created. The investor buys ordinary shares in the company, so they receive a share certificate. They become a shareholder in the company, and the company directors are required to submit an annual report to their shareholders. They can do that by using the internet to deliver those reports. So there's a lot more control on crowdsourced funding equity raising. That's not to in any way knock crowdfunding. It plays an important role, but it's more aligned to a charity type contribution than a investment in a company. And that's the difference. Priscilla, I hope that's clear enough.
Thanks, Peter, because we do have to inform the public, isn't it, about what's going on. They have to learn the new terms and the new venues and avenues for them. So what should small businesses that are interested in reviewing their opportunities of alternative capital fundraising, what should they do if they want to review?
Yeah, well, in the first instance, I think you should talk to your accountant. Your accountant is the trusted advisor. That's what around 67% of small business people obviously say in the various surveys that are conducted. But if your accountant is not familiar with these alternative capital raising opportunities, or is not enthusiastic, or is too busy doing tax returns, why not contact Priscilla? You've got Priscilla's details. She's presenting this presentation. And if Priscilla needs some assistance, she'll contact me, or I think my details also come up. You can contact me, and we can
yes,
organize some advice to be given to you.
Exactly. Small business can come directly to us. You do have a full website for small business, is it?
Yeah, that's right. We've got www.esssmallbusiness.com.au, where we have articles and some systems relative to small business. We do have a fair bit of material there on crowdsourced funding equity raising.
Exactly. So we're adding the new venues too. So now just a small sentence about what accountants should do to assist small business.
I think they need to do some studying to understand what's available. You can read our material. We put out a lot of free material through our weekly Accountants Minute and our various social media articles. You can go to our website, www.esssmallbusiness.com.au, biztools.com.au and click on to the 23 separate learn mores that we have there on a whole range of matters that we have within ESS BizTools. That gives you an overview. And you could become a subscriber. And if you become a subscriber, you are invited to attend a monthly webinar whereby we discuss new ideas and trends. And you also can access some free webinars as part of your subscription service. So we have a range of products that are available to assist accountants to familiarize yourself with these services so that you can start offering them to your clients and to your prospects.
Yeah, don't forget where you can find us help and support. This is the website we talked about, specifically dedicated to small business. There is always updated with the latest trends, and same for an accountant who would like to be an expert in advisory. So they're gonna find the tools right there. My website also offers you an opportunity to actually apply for a meeting. We offer 30 minutes free strategy meetings for you. You can book yourself in there, and then or just go to Peter's websites and get concerned with that. Our second website links back to Peter's tools. You can also find it there. And as we said, we're gonna continue informing small business and accountants about the new trends, and we will always be proactive ourselves in actually putting forward all these amazing things available for them. It is an exciting time ahead, isn't it, Peter?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, we're at the start of a new decade. I think this last decade's probably been a bit tougher than what we all thought it was going to be. I don't know what the next 10 years are going to bring, but I am sure we're going to continue to get changes. So anyone that thinks that business is going to stay exactly the way it is in 2019 over the next decade, I think's got it wrong. We're going to have more computer software, we're going to have more systems, we're going to have better communications available for everyone around Australia. And for accountants, it's all changing. And there's been 3 major reports released this year. We've had the Commonwealth Bank report, which indicated that more and more accountancy firms were now starting to think about offering business advisory services. We had the Australian Financial Review report of 2 or 3 weeks ago, which analysed the top 100 accounting firms and identified that business advisory services was the real new item that most of them were pushing, and the opportunity to offer virtual chief financial officer services. They were the 2 major new initiatives, is what the Financial Review called them. We've been talking about them for 20 years, but they called them new initiatives for the top 100 accounting firms. And then last week, we had the CEO of Xero in London make a major presentation, and he has indicated that in Xero's opinion, that 80% of the work currently being done. So wherever you are, just have a think about what you're doing at present. 80% of that will not be there in 20 years' time. And it's just not going to wait to 20 years and then suddenly all these things occur. These changes are going to occur progressively. A lot of people think that 2025 is going to be a real, important pivotal year in this whole progress. But I think it's just going to keep on going. So when you went to university or when you did your CPA or your PY for the Institute, That was only to give you a ticket to go into this world, this exciting world of being able to advise people running businesses on how you can help add value to their businesses. But what will be required is for you all to continue to upgrade your skills, learn more, read more, so that you can continue to be the trusted advisor for small businesses and medium-sized enterprises at least 67% rating in 10 years' time. That's the challenge for the day, I think, Priscilla.
Thanks, Peter. So we will be back. We are very privileged to have you today. And we will be back because small business and accountants, they need us. And they need your tools and your work. Your work is amazing. It is second to none in Australia. And if you really wanted good tools to work with, advisory tools and all other updates on the new trends, and you want to stay on the top of the competition, please follow Peter.
Thanks, Priscilla. Can I say to you and to everyone else, Merry Christmas. And I really look forward to working with you, of course, Priscilla, and with your viewers and listeners in 2020.
Exactly. We'll be back early next year. Enjoy the festive season. Merry Christmas, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Peter.
Bye.